This video is aimed at students who might already know all of their basic major chords. They might know a few seventh chords and might be able to get around the fretboard a little bit with some riffs and maybe a few scales, but the scary world of bar chords haven't been yet tackled. In this video I'm going to talk about the 4 basic bar chord shapes, or at least the 4 basic bar chord shapes that I think are the most useful, and why we might want to learn these first and how to play them. I'm going to show you these 4 shapes now, but it's also really useful if you know the note names of the bottom 2 strings. That way you can combine the knowledge of the shape and the note name and be able to play any of these major and minor chords that you come up with in 2 positions on the neck. If you don't know these shapes already, I've got the note names already. I've just put a video up recently on that, so check that out. If you do, then let's get started. So we need to know our basic open chords to start off with. I'd advise learning these first anyway and get them under your fingers before you tackle bar chords. But the 2 that we definitely need to know is the E major, E minor shapes and the A major, A minor shapes. So the A shapes and the E shapes are the ones we're going to use. First thing we're going to do, I'm going to do step by step how to get into each of these shapes. First thing we're going to do is strum an E major chord. Nice basic E major chord, okay? Now I want you to play the exact same chord again, but imagine that I've chopped off your first finger, okay? So you're not allowed to use this finger, but we want to hear the chord exactly the same. We should hear this, but without your first finger pressed down. Now, if you just take your first finger off, we get a different chord entirely. We get a minor chord. So what you'll need to do is shuffle your fingers along. I use the little 2 fingers on the fret 2 and 2 on the A and D string, and then my middle finger, my swearing finger, goes on first fret of the G there. My first finger is just sort of hanging out here, but if I strum, you've got your basic major chord, okay? Next thing we're going to do is shift that up 1 fret. Give it a strum anyway. That's not the chord we're after, but it does sound pretty cool. It's this Spanish sounding chord. And this is the next thing we're going to do. This is where things get tricky. We're going to bar our first finger across the first fret like this. We're just going to put our first finger down across all of the strings and press down. This is what we want to hear. We want to hear each note, each string clearly. Now, it's very, very common the first time you try this for this to just sound like this. And not quite hearing the notes, some of them will sound dead. That's totally normal, don't worry. We're going to go through some things to help with that now. The first thing we need to do is make sure that we're playing as close to the fret as possible. We don't want to be at an angle like this. I'm not sure if you can see that clearly there whenever we play, because we're going to be closer to the fret on some strings and further away on others. We want to be perfectly parallel with the fret itself, and we want to be right next to it. So not on top, because we get quite a dull sound then, but just behind it. Imagine you're leaning against a wall. It's the same thing with a fret. It probably looks like I'm flat on top, but there, if it just catches the light, can you see the metal is just visible? I'm not on top of it. And the same applies here. We can only get so close with some of the frets, but we want to be as close as possible without being on top. Make sure you're pressing nice and hard as well. Don't be afraid to press down hard with your fingers. You might get some grooves and marks on your fingers. That's totally normal. Over time these will turn into calluses and you won't even feel it anymore. Give that a go now, give that a strum, and hopefully that'll sound better. If it doesn't, if you're still having some problems, have a look in the middle of the neck. So on my guitar I've got this skunk stripe that runs down the middle of the neck. If you don't, just imagine that you've got a line going down there, and you want your thumb to be on top of the neck like this, so it's creating like a T shape, so that if the neck's going this way, you're perpendicular to the neck, you're going the opposite, you're sort of making a cross, and your thumbnail is on the middle of that line or imaginary line. That way you can create this pincer type shape with your thumb and first finger, and when you squeeze you're adding pressure with your first finger and supporting that with your thumb, which makes pressing down a lot easier. Try that and give it a strum. So we've got as close to the frets as we can be, and thumb in the middle of the neck. Now if it still doesn't sound right, that is still totally normal. This is the biggest hurdle I think most of my guitar students go through, is learning their bar chords, because it's a big step up from those open chords. Just give it a go, spend 5 or 10 minutes on it, and then if your hand starts to ache or you start to get frustrated, take a break. Shake your hand off, give that hand a quick massage and take a break. It may be a few weeks, it may even be a month or 2 before you can get these played. Just add them to your practice routine, nice and slow. That's the first shape, the first shape that we're going to deal with today. Second shape is super easy. I can just show you that now. We just take off our middle finger. So this is actually an F chord we're playing now, but it's a bar chord shape. I'm going to give that a strum. That's our major, the one we've just done. Take off my middle finger, and then we've got a minor chord. Now this one we have to be super clear that we're pressing down properly, because if we don't, we really do lose this note here, which is the important one. The next two shapes we're going to worry about are the ones with root notes and the A string. These two we've just done are root notes on the E string, which means this note here, the note on the E string, is the name of the chord. If I play a note here, a chord here, the 6th fret on the E string is a B flat, so this must be B flat major. If I take this finger off, B flat minor. So by learning these two shapes already, if you can get these out and make them audible, we've already learned all the major and minor chords. The downside is some of the chords are quite far apart, so if we had to do an F chord followed by a D chord, for example, just using power chords. Actually, let me do two that can only be power chords, so F sharp major or G flat major and D sharp major, right? That might sound quite cool together, but they're miles apart. It's not super practical, so we learned two more shapes with root notes and the A strings, the major and the minor chords again, but just slightly different shapes. These come from the A chord shapes instead this time. So A major, same as before, play me an A major chord and do the exact same thing again, but imagine I've chopped off that first finger. You don't have to do this each time, this is just illustrating how to get to the shape. You don't have to go through the step of playing it, taking the finger off and moving it. So this is the A chord without our first finger. And I'm going to shift this up. I'm going to shift this up 3 frets this time just for ease so you can see it, so it's not out of range of the camera. I can't quite see what it's picking up. So I'm going to move this up 3 frets and then put my first finger down across the 3rd fret. Let me just show it you from the 1st fret angle like we did before as well. So up 1 fret and then flatten down there. That's our first shape there. That's our major shape. Unlike the other one we looked at, it's not as easy as taking one finger off. For this one we have to think in terms of the A minor shape. We have to re-juggle our fingers around. So we've got an A minor without our first finger's free. Shift this up 1 fret and then put this finger down. Same rules apply. We want to be as close to the fret as we can be without being on top, and we want our thumb smack bang in the middle of the neck so we can apply a lot of pressure with our fingers. Don't be afraid to squeeze. It's totally normal for it to hurt a little bit starting on, and these markings you get on your fingers, these grooves you get on your fingers is totally normal. So what I've just been over in a hopefully relatively short video is these 4 basic bar chord shapes, and I think they're the most useful bar chord shapes early on. We can get C-shaped bars, we can get G-shaped bars, which are a little bit more, that was a bit rubbish actually, there we go, which are a little bit trickier. These are the most useful ones I think, because with this you can play most pop and rock songs that just, any chord that just uses major and minor chords you can play now, adding on along the knowledge you picked up in the other video of the notes and the fretboard. All these chords that might have eluded you before, B flat minor or F sharp major or G flat major is exactly the same chord, whoops. You can play all of them because it's just one shape, or you move around, or 4 shapes you move around to make it easy. Hopefully this has been useful. This is the kind of thing I like to teach students when they've maybe gone past sort of grade 1 level, whether they've done the exam or not. If you're a teacher yourself, or you just started teaching, or you're sort of learning without a teacher, I'd get the basic major and minor chords down first. So C, A, G, E, D, A minor, D minor, and E minor, maybe even some of the 7th chords. Get some strumming going first. And this is super important to remember. If you take away one thing from this, and maybe this hasn't made a whole lot of sense to you, but take one thing away. Bar chords are tricky, they're not easy, so don't worry if you're finding it hard. Everyone finds it hard when they start out. I've never had a student who's just picked up a guitar, never played before, and played some bar chords. It doesn't happen. I really struggled with this early on. Look how tiny my hands are. I'm sure I've gone over these before, but it was really difficult starting out, so persist with it. Do 5-10 minutes a day, and within a couple of weeks, a month's time, you wonder why you ever found it difficult, okay? So that's bar chords. If you're interested in learning any music theory or applied music theory for the guitar, I've got a few videos planned that deal with that as a subject, so stay tuned for that. Thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you found this useful, and I'll see you soon.